My name is Jeff Hoyt, president of Zeolite Labs, and I want to talk to you about how to use Zeolite effectively in your practice to get the best results with your clients or patients. So, a little bit about me: I'm into wellness, right? I've started a number of brands in the space. I love innovation. I like doing things differently with the philosophy of just doing things in a way that haven't been done before to get results that also have not been achieved. So I like to take what's out there, combine the research, and make it better. And that's what I've done with my brands. My focus right now is really on detox because if you live in the 21st century, you have to detox. We're not going to stay healthy by accident. We actively have to take control of our health. And as I was on my journey and also working with clients, I discovered that really the missing link was the effective detox, right? I was doing a lot of microbial cleansing, a lot of biohacking and all sorts of, fancy technology and supplements, but without effectively removing the toxic elements that have accumulated in our bodies over years, we're going to be limited in the results we get. So that led me to Zeolite Labs, where we developed a next generation zeolite supplement. So let's get into it here. We're going to talk about the benefits of zeolite. We're going to kind of look at my take on detox reactions and why they might not be a good thing. We're going to look at dosing, which is absolutely crucial when it comes to zeolite, probably the most misunderstood thing. We're going to compare zeolite to some binders and some synthetic chelators out there. We're going to look at the safety concerns and then compare some zeolite products and then talk about a couple case studies. So starting off, what is zeolite? Zeolite it's a naturally occurring mineral that forms over time, and it's negatively charged, right? So the concept is it works by cation exchange. It's naturally has positively charged elements in its structure, electrolytes, so potassium, sodium, calcium, magnesium, and then it swaps those for other positively charged elements like the heavy metals, the ammonia, the mycotoxins, and various other toxic elements. So that's what makes it a selective binder, right? So the negative charge is what attracts it to the positively charged toxic elements, but it's not just sopping up everything that it's coming in contact with like most binders or chelators, because it works by this swap mechanism where it's a selective binder. So it's really looking at atomic weight, and it's just binding. It prefers the minerals that it has naturally occurring. So if it comes across other minerals or nutrients, it leaves those alone because it already has what it prefers. When it comes across something heavier, like a heavy metal, it trades it for it. So very interesting mechanism of action. Broad spectrum. That's one of the reasons I love zeolite. It binds to so many different things, and it works both by a direct binding mechanism, and also, as we're going to see, it really gets the body to the point where its natural detox functions are optimized and the body starts indiscriminately dumping a number of toxic elements. So one thing to consider with zeolite, because there's a lot of information on the internet, a lot of confusion around it. Zeolite is a classification of a mineral, right? There's a number of naturally occurring zeolites out there, and they're not all going to be, they're very different. They're definitely not all going to be safe. The form that has been studied and proven safe and effective for human consumption is Clinoptilolite. That's the form of zeolite, and that's what we use in ZeoCharge. So when you're looking for a zeolite supplement, you want to make sure it's Clinoptilolite, and there's a number of reasons for that. Also, something to be aware of is there are synthetic zeolites. So they've manufactured synthetic forms of zeolite, and those are going to be completely different and not something that I personally would be willing to put in my body. So just keep that in mind as well. So zeolite is a broad term. We're talking about natural clinoptilolite zeolite in this presentation, mainly ZeoCharge, which is a proven zeolite product that's been shown to reduce heavy metals from the tissue level of the body and do so safely and gently. All right, so some of the benefits of zeolite supplementation. One, it's detox, right? It's famous for detox, and it's able to detox a number of things. Generally, when people think about zeolite detox, they're thinking heavy metals, and as we're going to see, the ZeoCharge zeolite has been shown to remove 15 different toxic metals from the full body detox, which is pretty incredible. But there's a lot of other things that it's going to help detox beyond heavy metals, and that includes ammonia, which I really think is a huge deal for a lot of people, especially with the livers not functioning properly, or if they've got Lyme or some other microbial issue where some of the waste products of those microbes include ammonia, right? So just binding to that ammonia can be incredibly helpful. Mycotoxins, right? We know that just mold toxicity, SIRS, just all sorts of things involving the immune system and mold is becoming a pretty big issue, as you're probably seeing with your client base. And zeolite has been shown to bind to a number of different mycotoxins, including ochratoxin A and aflatoxins. So, and it's actually used in animal feed as well to bind to those things. So, a lot of people do find very good success with zeolite for mold toxicity, which is a big deal because it's becoming such an issue. Histamine as well; it binds to excess histamine in the body, so that can definitely be help with symptoms. Immune system, I think that's really one of the biggest benefits of zeolite for a lot of people is its positive effect on the immune system. I like to say it calms the storm in the body, right? And this could go either way. It all depends on how the body's responding to the detox, which we're going to get into. But the goal is to have an effective and an efficient detox where the total stress burden on the body is actually being reduced during the detox process. That's what's going to result in a calming effect. In most detoxes, it's the opposite, where the body goes under a great deal of stress during the detox, and that's going to activate the immune system and be the opposite. So it really just depends, and we're going to get into dosing and kind of how to avoid the reactions as well. Gut health, fantastic. For leaky gut, just increased intestinal permeability, all sorts of gut issues. A lot of clients are absolutely shocked at how effective the ZeoCharge is for normalizing gut function and for digestion. One of the main concerns people have is constipation, and they say, I can't take it because it might cause constipation. And then when they start, they realize that actually it keeps them regular most of the time. It's very interesting. We're going to get into that at the end under the frequently asked questions. But some of the other benefits, and there's a lot, we're just listing a couple here, and there's tons of information here on zeolitelabs.com. Feel free to check that out. There's just lots of videos. There's case studies shown. There's some great stuff on there. It's really resource heavy because that was kind of one of our goals with Zeolite Labs. One, provide the best available zeolite product on the market, but also provide the education to use it effectively, because there's just a lack of that in the industry. I really believe zeolite is one of the most powerful, but also one of the most misunderstood products out there. So it is an antioxidant as well. And it has very unique antioxidant properties. So it actually has the ability to trap free radicals in its cage-like structure. And I don't think I mentioned that, but zeolite is a cage, like a honeycomb cage-like structure. So with the negative charge, it attracts the positively charged toxic elements into the cage-like structure, which makes it unique compared to a lot of other detox agents that just adsorb them to the surface. Zeolite can actually adsorb, so attach things to its surface, but also the main mechanism is by swapping the cations and binding to these toxic elements and bringing them into the cage where they're safely then removed from the body. So it's just less likely to drop and cause redistribution like a lot of the other detox agents out there. So for antioxidants, it can bind directly to the free radicals, but also just helping prevent the production of free radicals by removing a lot of the other toxic elements out there, right? So by removing the heavy metals and other things that are resulting in oxidative stress through increased free radical production, it can help in that way as well. So we've got some information on that on the site too. And then nutrient absorption. And that's one of the main issues with binders is it going to negatively impact nutrients? And we're going to see that it doesn't when used effectively and properly, but it also helps with nutrient absorption, and especially in individuals where there's just a high toxic burden, right? When you have a high toxic load, there's going to be heavy metals that are competing for space in your cells with essential minerals. And there's going to be inflammatory processes taking place that are just impairing the nutrient absorption in the body. So we've seen a lot of great results without even changing diet, just from taking ZeoCharge, just being able to improve nutrient absorption. All right, who needs to detox, right? So I kind of mentioned it. If you live in the 21st century, we all need to be detoxing to some level. Everyone is always detoxing, right? And we're going to get into 3 levels of detox, but everyone is going to be, whatever their body's natural capacity or detox potential is, they're going to be removing whatever they're exposed to, hopefully everything they're exposed to on a daily basis, and preventing the accumulation. It's not always the case because of the high exposure, but we're all detoxing to some extent. But the problem is everyone I've ever tested has accumulation of toxic metals along with other toxicants that are in the tissue. And once they get there, the body becomes comfortable with it, which we're going to talk about. But basically, we can all benefit from kind of a next level detox, right? So especially someone who's dealing with a complex health challenge, because they always are going to end up with accumulated toxins and metals in tissue because their body doesn't have the resources to effectively detox on a daily basis, right? So I refer to it as detox energy. There's a certain amount of energy that your body has to put towards detox. And if your body's working on microbial issues and mental emotional stress, or any sort of other stressor, which is anything that makes your body work harder than normal to stay balanced, then it's going to take away from that detox energy. And as you're exposed to your daily dose of toxins through the food, water, and air and internal production and other things we're going to talk about, then if your body can't actively process it all, then your body's going to start tucking those toxic elements and metals into tissue, fat, and in organs, right? So that's where the exposure versus accumulation is interesting, because a lot of clients, you probably hear this, they say, oh, I don't need a detox because I live this super clean lifestyle. I eat all organic and, I do juice cleanses or whatever they say they're doing. But it's not all about the current, even if they live in this perfectly clean environment and they're not exposed, it's not necessarily about their current lifestyle and exposure. It's about, that's helpful, but it's about what has accumulated in the body over the years, right? And even if it was one exposure as a child, a lot of times those metals just stay in the body. The body becomes comfortable with them. So kind of interesting there. Some people, and then the microbial issues as well and the toxins. So a lot of people are really focused, on the parasites and the bacteria and the various microbial issues, but they're opportunistic. They need an opportunity to be there. And a lot of times it's that toxic environment that's allowing them to thrive. And as you start removing the toxic elements, a lot of people find that the microbial issues start resolving on their own, even without antimicrobials. So zeolite does tend to have a pretty strong antiparasitic effect, very effective for microbes like Lyme, seems to be, viral infections, yeast, especially like candida is going to, bind to mercury and things. So as you start removing the mercury, a lot of times the yeast leaves on its own. And then ammonia, another one, right? Because as yeast produces ammonia as one of its byproducts, and ammonia is an alkaline agent, and candida thrives in an alkaline environment. So basically the waste products that candida produce helps it thrive. So as the zeolite comes in, binds to that ammonia along with the other toxic elements it's producing, it removes that opportunity for the yeast to thrive, and then the immune system can attack it and take care of it. So lots of things, but yeah, detox. We all need to be detoxing. One big thing that you probably have a number of clients that are kind of classified in this situation is too sick to detox, right? We hear it a lot. And a lot of people, they try to detox, they get the terrible reactions. They're just not able to do it because their body is not able to handle the extra toxic burden and stress of the detox process. And that's really where the effective use of zeolite just stands apart from all other detoxes, because there's so many people who have failed at all other detoxes. And when they take the zeolite and use it effectively, they're able to actually detox without the negative symptoms, which is absolutely incredible. So we're going to get into that. All right. So, why is detox harder than you think? A lot of people think you just take some supplements or you have a good lifestyle, and, there's all these claims on various products, but it's just more complicated than that. And the key is that the body's in control of detox, right? If the body doesn't want to detox, it's not going to detox. No chelator, no matter how strong, is going to be able to go in and rip out a heavy metal like mercury from the tissue if the body doesn't want to let it go. If you fight against the body, you're going to lose that battle. That's why the most effective way to detox is to work with the body, not to fight against it. So if, for example, let's say someone, and it's different. Detox is different in someone that's relatively healthy opposed to someone that has a complex health challenge, right? Because the body is more focused on short-term survival over long-term thrival. So from the body's perspective, it would prefer to have something incredibly toxic like mercury stored in the brain or kidneys or liver or lungs, opposed to trying to excrete it, where it's then going to be exposed to the immune system, resulting in an inflammatory process and a very stressful experience on the body. So if someone is not able to handle that extra stress, especially people that have complex health issues or autoimmunity or something of that nature, the body's generally going to just keep these toxic elements tucked in fat for storage because it doesn't want to deal with it. And a lot of times they just never leave. Now, short term, that is helpful because it does calm down the immune response. Long term, it's not great because it's going to be deteriorating the organ where it's stored. So very interesting stuff. With chelation, for example, you have a healthy individual where potentially some of these chelators are going to be able to go in and start grabbing toxic elements from tissue and excreting them, although pretty stressful. But in someone with a complex health issue, they'll take the same chelator and it will not be able to remove those metals from the tissue because the body will simply not let go. And we have a few case studies on that. It's very interesting stuff. But the key is the body's in control of detox. If it doesn't want to detox, it's not going to detox. We don't want to have to, suffer through a detox, fight through it, suck it up, any of that stuff, because really that's a stressful experience and the body's going to start shutting down detox pathways. All right, so we're going to look at how the body processes metals and my theory of the 3 levels of detox. And this is basically, I gathered this from utilizing the heavy metal test, the OligoScan, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit, which is a tissue level test for heavy metals, which is pretty cool. But basically the way I see it is, and I've got a whole, there's videos on this as well on the website, and I've got a whole video on detox cycling. Feel free to reach out to me, Jeff@zeolitelabs.com, and request that. It's very, very interesting, just showing how the body, I have visual examples of what I'm about to explain, how the body processes stuff. But basically, what I see is you've got level 1, which is going to be kind of the circulatory, so the bloodstream and also the gut, and just what your body is currently transporting and processing. And then level 2 is general tissue. Level 3 is the deep storage. That's really more of the organs. So for example, let's say someone is exposed to a high level of mercury immediately. They eat a bunch of tuna or swordfish or shark, or I don't know why they ate being shark, but they ate something that has a bunch of mercury, or they got poisoned. They got mercury in their bloodstream. Let's say that. Okay. So immediately the body's going to go to work and it's going to try to remove it's going to try to remove all of it. And based on, how much detox energy you have, how many resources available, hopefully you're able to get it all out. But if you're not able to, because the body's primary focus is, once again, short-term survival, and its goal is to remain homeostasis in the blood, right? Balance in the blood, whatever it can't remove relatively quickly, it has to do something with, and it tucks it in to tissue. It's going to store it into fat. And I think generally where it goes is going to be into this level 2 general tissues. That's kind of going to be like a dispersion of just the fat throughout your body. That's where it goes. And I kind of consider it a holding area, or just kind of a large storage unit for these toxic elements. But I think what happens potentially, and then if the person becomes healthy enough and has enough energy, the body will then release that back into level 1 for excretion through the body. Now, a lot of times that never happens because they're continuously exposed to toxic elements, and or their body's just not willing to let go, because once it's comfortable, it doesn't want to risk it trying to get it out, especially if it had a stressful experience during the exposure. I kind of refer to it as detox PTSD, or if they've had previous experiences in the past with detox where the body hasn't responded well, the body's just always more likely to keep the metals stored in tissue. So after this general tissue area kind of fills up, the body has to find another storage unit. And I think that's where it goes into the deep storage. That's most likely going to be basically organs, just deeply stored areas. And at that point, it's very difficult to remove the heavy metals because you have a lot of them, and the body just keeps them there and doesn't really want to do anything with them. And we're able to see through the OligoScan the different levels of detox, which is interesting, which I'm going to talk about a little bit. And then cycling, the body basically cycles between these different levels. So what we can see through the case studies program we did is that the body will basically dump metals during an effective detox protocol with zeolite. It'll dump metals from level 3 into level 2, and then it'll go and they're not leaving the body at that point. So that won't show up on a urine test, a hair test, a blood test, because they're not they're not in level 1 yet. They're just in level 2. But then the body will then dump them from level 2 to level 1. That's when they'll show up on the other tests. And then the body repeats the process. So it's very interesting. It's quite incredible, honestly. Okay, detox reactions. So generally when we're talking about detox, people assume that they have to have these detox symptoms, the reactions, the headaches, the nausea, the irritability, the joint pain, etc. And it's generally recognized that, we just have to kind of suck it up and get through these. And I think largely that is not necessary. And what we know, when we think about it, what a detox reaction is just a toxicity overload, right? It's stress being added to the body. It means there's too many toxins that are basically in level 1, right? So I think what's happening is that the metals or whatever toxic element we're dealing with is coming from one of these levels and it's going into level 1. So the current processing, and there's a certain threshold what your body can handle in this level. So if you're already at max capacity and then you take a detox agent that pushes one of these things into level 1, now your body's overburdened. It could barely handle what it was dealing with already. Now it definitely can't handle this extra level. Now we've got this toxicity overload that's adding stress, and then your body can't handle it all. That's where the symptoms come in, right? One, there's an increased immune response, but a lot of times there's redistribution of these toxic elements, and then they end up back in level 2 or level 3. So just not an ideal situation, especially long-term. Sometimes the reactions are unavoidable, but a lot of times it's just an indication of an inefficient detox. All right, we want both an effective and an efficient detox. Effective meaning it's working, efficient meaning it's working with your body, not against it. And so, the fastest way really to detox is a gentle detox. Because a lot of people think, oh, I'm having these symptoms, it's a really good sign, it means it's working. It really means, yes, to some extent it is, but it's working against your body, right? And at some point, the body might actually shut off its detox pathways because it becomes too stressful and you think the detox is over, but you might, it might not be at all. So one thing where the detox reactions are definitely not good is with the redistribution aspect. That's just a sign of an inefficient detox. There's too many toxins coming from level 3 and 2 into level 1, and some of them are redistributing, causing inflammation. That's an issue. But the other type of detox reactions is more of a Herxheimer reaction, and that's more of a microbial die-off. So a lot of times that is just occurring in level 1, right? You've got, let's say, a cluster of biofilms where you've got some heavy metals, you've got yeast, you've got viruses, parasites, all these things clustered together. And as you take zeolite or some other detox agent, it comes in and it tears apart this biofilm, and all of the components of the biofilm are now exposed to the immune system, and that's resulting in the increased inflammatory response and the detox symptoms, right? So a lot of people think they're having these detox reactions and they think this is a great detox. It might just be stirring things up in level 1 and not even getting to a deeper level detox, right? So without testing, there's no way to know, but that's one thing. Now, sometimes the herxing is unavoidable. I think the redistribution is generally avoidable, and it's definitely not ideal. Sometimes the herxing is a little bit more difficult to control, but still we've been able to control it pretty well with the zeolite when used properly. So that's my thoughts on detox reactions. Ideally, when you detox, what I tell people is when you detox, you want to feel absolutely nothing or you want to feel better, right? Because if you feel worse, it means that stress is being added to the body. You're going to have to pulse on and off the product. You're going to be limited in your detox. It's just adding stress. You're overloading level 1. If you feel nothing and the detox is working, it means you're removing things without adding much stress on the body or not to the point of symptoms, which is fantastic. If you feel better, that's even better, right? That's a bonus. So we want you to feel better, of course, eventually. It's just a matter of, are you going to feel better right away, or is it going to take time? And it kind of depends on where the metals are and other toxic elements. Are they in level 1 or level 2 and 3? If you've got a ton of metals here that your body can't keep up with, you could be having detox reactions every single day without even taking a detox supplement, just because your body's naturally having reactions to the toxic elements that you can't even deal with, right? So if you then take zeolite and it removes those toxic elements, your body it just calms that storm, right? Your body can breathe again. It reduces the stress burden. You're going to feel better. If your issue is more in level 2 and 3, where they might not be causing a lot of symptoms, or the symptoms are looking different, potentially nervous system issues and various other things, it might take a few months to start getting those benefits. So it really depends on the person. All right, dosing strategy. This is absolutely crucial. The most important thing with zeolite is the quality and the quantity. So taking a proper quality product is not enough. You have to take it at the right dose, right? The 2 Qs. So there's a dosing paradox that I discovered a number of years ago with zeolite, where the higher dose of zeolite is actually gentler and more effective than the low dose, right? So I've got a whole theory on zeolitelabs.com. And you can email me too, and I can send it to you. There's a video and there's a 14-page document under the education tab going over my entire theory why. But it definitely, I call it the zeolite dosing paradox, and then I have the theory behind why that's occurring. But 10 milligrams of zeolite is much more likely to cause a detox reaction than 10,000 milligrams, right? So and the reason is the higher dose is a more effective and an efficient detox. The low dose is enough to go in and stir things up, break open biofilms, kind of disrupt things in level 1, potentially get to some level 2, maybe level 3. And it just overloads level 1, and you get all these reactions. But when you take the 10,000 milligrams, and these are just hypothetical doses, the doses will vary. But basically, the point is, if you take a microdose versus a normal dose, the normal dose is able to, it stirs stuff up still, but it's able to clean up its own mess, right? So it kind of makes a mess. Your body has to deal with it. The higher dose makes a mess. It cleans it up, right? So the key is you want to take enough zeolite. You think of them as little zeolite soldiers, like in your little zeolite army. You want to take enough to have enough zeolite particles to bind to everything currently floating around in level 1, and then also have leftover unused zeolite particles that are going to be able to bind to anything that gets dumped into level 1 from levels 2 or 3. So that's going to completely eliminate the detox reactions and avoid the extra burden on your body. So one thing to consider as well is a lot of people will take zeolite at a low dose, and we're going to get into liquids, but the liquids are generally less than 1 milligram, right? Less than 1. And we're going to talk about it. So that's an incredibly low dose, and they're mostly just powdered zeolite mixed with water. We're going to talk about it. So that's why a lot of people get terrible reactions with liquid zeolites, and they think it's working, but really it's just because it's stirring stuff up. There's a ton of redistribution, and it's probably not getting to levels 2 and 3. It's probably just stirring stuff up on level 1. We don't know. Once again, without testing, it's going to depend on the person. Binding dose versus detox dose, right? So a lot of people, when they feel better on a zeolite product, it's because they're binding, and they're both forms of detox. I refer to level 1 detox as binding, and I refer to levels 2 and 3 detox as the detox dose, right? So you could take, let's say 1,000 milligrams, right, of zeolite, and that might only be enough to bind to a lot of the toxic elements in circulation, level 1, and in the gut, but not enough to get to the point where you're detoxing the deeply stored metals in levels 2 and 3. And some people feel really, really good on that type of lower dose, because it's enough to lower the immune response, calm things down, because it's assisting the body's natural detox processes, but they might not be getting to the next level. So we have case studies as well where people were taking a lower dose for a number of months or even years, feeling incredible, but not getting the reduction in the tissue levels of metals. Then they raised the dose, and bam, they got to the next level of detox. So dose is absolutely crucial. 1, to reduce the stress on the body, reduce the detox reactions, and 2, to offer an effective full body detox. All right, there's just a few of the reasons why a higher dose is more effective or more efficient than a low dose, less likely to cause reactions. You can check that out on the website. Daily dose toxins. So this is what I consider just what you're exposed to on a daily basis, right? So we're exposed to all sorts of toxic elements. Of course, we've got the food, water, air, but then, and these are level 1, right? So what we're exposed to, that's what we're going to be processing. That's what's going to be transported, and hopefully they're all leaving the body. If they're not all leaving the body, then every day you're getting an accumulation into levels 2 and 3, which is the case with a lot of people. If you can't handle your daily dose of toxins, you're just going to get more and more toxic every single day and end up with just a ton of toxic elements. But we're talking level 1 here, daily dose. So external sources, that's what people think of. Food, water, air. I mean, you've got the cosmetic products and just all sorts of stuff. But one of the most overlooked sources of toxins are the internally produced toxins. The toxins produced from metabolic waste products like ammonia, microbial waste products, things from lime and from yeast and various things, which include ammonia and others, exo and endotoxins. And then you have excess histamine, you've got free radicals, all these waste products that are being produced by the body on a daily basis. And these are all normal, but when we have microbial issues, we're going to have an increased level. If we're not able to effectively remove what we're producing every day, we have a huge issue. Because the thing is, these are exposure, the other things, food, water, air, but these internally produced toxins are regenerative, right? They're new every day because the body's continuously producing these toxic elements. So let's say that 100% of your client's detox energy, its resources available for its detox, are all being used on the internally produced or regenerative toxins on a daily basis. That means all of the other toxic elements they're exposed to through the food, water, and air and just daily life in the 21st century, the body doesn't have enough energy to deal with those. So it tucks those, it just pushes them right into levels 2 and 3 because it has to use all of its energy here. It doesn't have enough to deal with the rest. And that's very common. So we have to, when we think about detox, have to address all these things. And that's why zeolite is so effective, because it's not just focusing on metals or plastics or just one thing. It's able to bind to so many different things, including everything listed here. But that's just one thing to consider, is that if you're not able to remove your daily dose, you're going to have an accumulation over time and just get worse and worse and worse. And one thing is, a lot of people think that they have, their chronic illness is caused by heavy metal toxins or some other toxic elements, which it definitely may be. But it also may be that their heavy metal and other toxic burdens are caused by the complex illness, right? So because if you have a complex illness, you're going to have a high toxic burden. It either could be the toxic burden could have caused or been a main contributing factor to the complex condition, like an autoimmune condition, or it could be a result of. So let's say that the primary issue was, it's like a severe emotional event, or even a physical event, or, root canal, treated teeth, breast implants, something. Well, breast implants is just pure toxicity, so that's a little different. But you have something that causes an autoimmune condition or cancer or something where your body has to dedicate a ton of resources towards it. Now you have reduced detox energy because your body's focusing so much on this other issue. So now when you're exposed to the various toxic elements we're exposed to through the food, water, and air and internal production, then our body is not able to remove them all. And that's when we start getting accumulation. And then the individual continues to get worse because now they have this increased toxic burden that is causing more, it's exasperating their current condition. So I hope that made sense. But basically, even if the heavy metals and toxic elements weren't the cause of the issue, they could be a result of the issue because the body's natural detox resources are reduced, resulting in an accumulation. And then the heavy metals and toxins become a main contributing factor to the condition, and it continues to get worse and worse. So hopefully that made sense. Okay. Detox energy, right? Just the total resources your body has available to put towards detox. So that's what I've been saying. If your detox energy is not even enough to handle your daily dose of toxins, you're automatically going to get accumulation. And I mean, the heavy metals and the toxins are things that the body can easily tuck into fat. Some of the other things are not really stored in fat. So that's what the body has to prioritize. And then it just has the fallback option to put the toxic metals and other environmental toxins into fat. And that's why it does so. All right. So really the step one to an effective detox is not to go in and try to grab, the metals from organs or general tissue. The step one is to address the daily dose of toxins, because you need to make room in level 1 so that when your body wants to detox level 2 and 3, it can handle it. Otherwise, you're going to get the terrible symptoms. You're going to get the redistribution. There's going to be issues, and your body might stop dumping the metals from level 3 and level 2 into level 1 if it becomes too stressful. So right, that's why we want the gentle detox, which is the most effective. And that's another key with zeolite. And most people are going to say it just goes in and it's going to be able to go into all the organs and the fat and just grab everything. I really don't think that's how it's working. I think the primary mechanism is it's just very effectively reducing the level one just the level one toxicity, what your body's processing, to the point where there's so much extra room, it just enhances your body's detox energy to the point where your body says, you know what, I'm going to start naturally releasing level 3 and level 2 toxic elements. So even if the zeolite doesn't have a direct bond to a toxic element, it doesn't mean it can't detox. And we see this with fluoride. We see this with things that zeolite definitely doesn't have an attraction to fluoride and the halogen group. But we've seen from the case studies that it is able to detox fluoride. There's actually a clinical study as well showing that it protects against fluoride toxicity in animals. So it's indirect, really. It's because I think what happens is, as there's room in level 1, the body indiscriminately just dumps all these toxic elements from tissue because it wants to get rid of them. It just usually can't because there's so much stuff going on in daily life with level 1. So I think that's kind of how it's working. That's just my theory on that. So some of the options for detox, right? So much stuff out there. You've got some great technologies, saunas, various things. I had a biohacking center with all sorts of fun stuff. There's great stuff out there. I love it all. And then you've got the chelators, you've got the charcoals, the bentonite clays, all sorts of stuff. And then you've got the, zeolite. So ZeoCharge is, we're going to talk about it a little bit, but that's our proprietary zeolite product. And that's, all the benefits I'm mentioning are for ZeoCharge. A lot of them really can't be attributed to other zeolites because a lot of them they're not going to be at the same level. So one, we want a full body detox, right? So some things can make that happen. Some synthetic chelators potentially. Synthetic chelators are kind of misunderstood. Usually they're extracellular detox agents, right? They're really not designed to go into the cell, which is interesting. A lot of people think they do, but generally they do not. So like on a urine provocation test or challenge test, generally it's just what was in the extracellular matrix being removed. So that's interesting. Some of them are designed to go in, but that's why it's a question mark. ZeoCharge, right? Full body detox at the cellular level. We can prove that through our case studies using the illegal scan, showing that it removes from the cellular tissue level a full body detox and able to remove all 3 levels of the toxic elements, which is absolutely incredible. Selective binder, right? So one of the main concerns with detox agents is that you just really can't, they're so stressful, you can't stay on them. You have to pulse on and off, and your body really can't get in the groove with detox because it's just such a stressful experience and it slows the process. The more symptoms you have, the slower the detox. It's kind of the opposite of what you think, because people think I'm having a ton of symptoms, it means the detox is working really well. It just means it's inefficient and there's a lot of stress being added, and your body's only going to detox at its own pace. So if you have all these symptoms, your body's probably going to start slowing down the release of toxic elements. And even with chelators, that's the thing. Even chelators that are designed to go in and to remove from tissue heavy metals, in someone with a complex health issue, it's not going to happen because the body's retention of the heavy metal is always going to be greater than the bond of any agent. And we've experimented with, like OSR, which is the strongest known chelator from Boyd Haley, right? Specifically designed to go into fat cells and remove mercury. Nothing even comes close in terms of capacity to do something, just binding strength. In the animal studies, it was able to, remove all the metals in like 2 weeks safely. It never lets go. It's such a strong bond to mercury that once it attaches to it, it never lets go and it generates a new compound. So they combined this OSR mercury compound and fed it to animals, didn't even hurt them, right? So it's an incredible thing. But the point of it, I'm not trying to sell you OSR. I don't even recommend it because if you were just exposed to mercury, it's probably the best thing, right? Because it goes in and grabs all this stuff floating around, incredible bond. But if you've been accumulating mercury for 30 years from the silver amalgam fillings in your mouth, then your body's not going to let go. And what happens a lot of times, I've heard a lot of reports of people taking chelators, they feel this tugging on their brain. And it's almost like this chelator's in there trying to remove, it's like a tug of war where the brain cells are retaining it because it's afraid to let go of the mercury. And then these chelators are trying to rip it out, and you're just fighting against the body, and you don't want to do that. So kind of interesting. And we have testing also to show that some, it's not, even with the studies showing that they offer a full body detox and remove metals from organs, studies are not done. They're for acute toxicity. They're for recent exposure. They're not for long-term chronic accumulation. If you've accumulated metals over time, your body responds differently because it doesn't want to let go as a self-defense mechanism. So that's something to consider with all detox agents. The goal is really not to go in and to grab them from tissue. The goal is to remove as many circulating things as possible to make room for the body to naturally release. Okay, selective binder, right? So it's not going to be destroying your vitamin and nutrient status like most other detox supplements, because it's selective. It's it's not binding to essential nutrients, which is fantastic and efficient, right? So there's a lot of things that might be effective detoxes, meaning they work, but efficient, meaning they work with the body, not against it, and they're just more gentle, right? So that's really the goal, because it's going to increase the speed of the detox, and you're going to be able to take it without continuing to pulse off of it. So a lot of people can take Zeolite continuously because it's actually reducing the stress load on their body, opposed to adding to it like all the other things. It's incredible. And then natural. So a lot of like synthetic chelators, not natural. A lot of other things, not natural. A lot of them are, but Zeolite is natural. So it just kind of checks all the boxes. Not saying it's the only great detox option out there. There's a lot of good stuff, but we just really haven't found anything that's worked as well as ZeoCharge. And we honestly were quite shocked when we did the case studies, because with Zeolite Labs, before launching, we wanted to see what it can do. We did a case studies program, and it was quite stunning what we were able to achieve with just Zeolite alone. Really incredible stuff. All right. Let's talk briefly about the different methods for heavy metals, testing for heavy metals. There's a lot of good methods out there, and they're just different, right? So the blood is going to be measuring what's being transported. The urine and hair are excretionary tests. Hair is going to be more of an average over time. You've got the ELISA, which is measuring the immune reactivity to certain metals. Bioenergetic testing, like electrodermal screening and muscle testing. And then you've got the oligoscan. The interesting thing about the oligoscan is it's measuring the tissue levels of heavy metals. So it's measuring the metals that are in the tissue of your hand, which is going to be level 2 metals, whereas blood, urine, hair is level 1. So it's measuring what's coming out. So if the levels rise on one of these tests, you know that it's a good sign generally, because the metals are coming out of tissue and they're leaving the body. They're going into level 1, but you don't know where they're coming from. They might be coming just from level 2 general tissue, or they might be coming from organs, but we don't know. With the oligoscan, it's measuring level 2 general tissue to begin with. So if the level rises on that, then you know it's coming from level 3 and it's going into level 2. So pretty interesting. Also interesting is with the bioenergetic testing, and you're going to get false negatives in all tests, right? Just because none of them are directly testing organs. So they're just snapshots of what you're looking at. Even with the bioenergetic testing, like the electrodermal screening or muscle testing, you're going to get false negatives if the body is not currently processing the metals. So if your body is tucking the mercury away because it doesn't want to deal with it, it's not going to show up on any of these tests. It's going to show up on the oligoscan to some extent, but not the organ level. So anyway, kind of interesting. I have a comparison video of all these different tests with some visual examples of the oligoscan. If you're interested, just email me, jeff@zeolitelabs.com, and you can request that. It's just a heavy metal test comparison video. If you're looking for, to implement some heavy metal testing into your practice. Let's talk about some of the safety concerns out there with Zeolite. So number one concern is, does it cause any sort of aluminum toxicity? Now, zeolites by definition are aluminum silicates, meaning they're mainly comprised of silicone and aluminum. And what some people assume is, well, it has aluminum in its structure, so automatically it's going to leach aluminum into your body, but that's not how it works. Now, zeolite is a broad term, right? It's a class of mineral. That's one of the reasons why Clinoptilolite is what we use in ZeoCharge and what was basically chosen for the supplement industry, because it has a high silicone to aluminum ratio, and that high ratio is what determines the structure and the stability of the structure. So a lot of the other zeolites naturally occurring have lower silicone to aluminum ratios, and they'll break down in in stomach acid, and they're not going to be stable, and those probably would cause aluminum toxicity. But those are not used for supplements. So clinoptilolite and all of the research has shown to not cause aluminum toxicity. Now, and we can prove it. So ZeoCharge is really the only one that has the tissue levels analysis where we can see that even at high doses, it doesn't raise tissue levels of heavy metals, and it actually has an aluminum detoxing effect. So you can rest assured with that. Synthetic zeolites are going to be different. So the lab grown or some of the synthetics and the nano and liquid zeolites you want to watch out for, because there is research indicating that synthetic zeolite will accumulate in tissue, the aluminum, which obviously is not ideal when you're trying to use it for detox. But the natural clinoptilolite, no problem. ZeoCharge, we can prove it. So I can't speak to the other products on the market because there's a lot of variation, but the only one that can really prove it for sure, ZeoCharge. All right, leach minerals. Because it's a select binder, it's not going to directly bind to the other toxic, the essential minerals and nutrients. But one thing to consider is that, because all the zeolite companies selling zeolite are going to say, oh, it doesn't mess up minerals or vitamins because it's selective, but there's an indirect effect that can occur. So if you're taking a low dose and it results in an inefficient detox and you have redistribution of metals that displaces minerals, it's going to mess up your minerals. And if that occurs, you're going to have increased oxidative stress. Your body's going to have to use up additional vitamins to combat that oxidative stress. So a lot of times, zeolite, especially low dose, will actually disturb vitamin and mineral status. No one will admit it, but it just is what it is. If it's an inefficient detox, just as any inefficient detox will do, because if there's redistribution, it's going to mess up minerals and mess up vitamins. So that's where the dose is very important. So as we can prove from our case studies, ZeoCharge is able to detox and generally optimize, improve the vitamin and mineral status at the same time, which is incredible. Let's compare some of the zeolite products on the market. So there's basically 3 different categories. You've got the powders, you've got the liquids, and now you've got the nanos. So initially, all zeolite products were in the powdered form with various particle size arrangements. So they took the zeolite mineral, micronized it into a fine powder, and those all vary quite a bit. Then you had this movement of liquid zeolites where companies were basically taking the powdered zeolite supplements and just mixing them with water and calling them liquid zeolites. And that was mostly just it was just for marketing purposes. They also didn't understand the dosing paradox at that point. So they thought that a lot of people would benefit from very low doses. So that's kind of where a lot of times when I talk about these high doses of zeolite I would consider them really normal doses. It's just that the industry has turned the normal dose into these super tiny doses, and they're these micro doses, which are a lot of times causing more harm than good because of the redistribution and inefficient detox. So anyway, the liquids generally are just going to be the normal powders mixed with water. They're often referring to them as nano or super tiny. Most of the time they're not. They're just straight powdered zeolite mixed with water. And sometimes they get to less than sub 1 micron in particle size, but most of the time they're in like the 2 to 41 micron range, which is just the traditional size of most of the powders. So nothing really special about them. They're generally around 2 to 5 milligrams. Sometimes they'll go up to about 25 milligrams per dose. So very low dose because there's only so much zeolite you can get in a little bottle, which is mostly water. And then, of course, there's the marketing terms. They talk about it being hydrated or activated or whatever terms they use, which really don't mean anything. Like hydrated zeolite, it just means it's mixed with water, right? So there's that. And then there's the nano zeolites. The true, and most of these liquids and nanos refer to themselves as nano, even if they're not. But there are a few companies that are actually selling nano-sized zeolite. So that's the zeolite particles are in the nano range, generally under 100 nanometers. And that is very small and and some of them are synthetic. So of course, be careful of that because you don't want to take the synthetic nano zeolites, in my opinion, because there's a number of issues there. But the natural nano zeolites are going to be smaller than 100 microns, at least according to their marketing. And the idea is that they're saying that that's going to be able to offer a full body detox where the powders are going to be too large and not going to be able to do so. So what I would initially say to that is, well, ZeoCharge is really the only zeolite product out of any category that is proven to offer a full body detox, removing toxic metals from a tissue level. So I'll say that. The other thing is, just because you have a super tiny particle doesn't mean it's going to be able just to go all over the body and remove toxic elements. So these nanozeolites have to go through the normal digestive process just like anything else. So you spray, or their drops or sprays, you take them orally, and then they're going to have to go into the mouth, through the esophagus, into the stomach, enter the small intestine, and they're going to have to absorb through the gut lining to get to the bloodstream and then move to wherever they're going to go. So in order for a nano or liquid or any zeolite to get to the bloodstream, it would have to pass through the entire digestive tract without encountering any toxicity that would bind the zeolite on the way. So we can see potentially with a super high dose of zeolite, it could get there because you're binding things on the way, but then there's leftover unused zeolite cages to make it to circulation. But with the liquids and nanos, that's very unlikely to happen because you're taking minuscule doses, and it's all going to be bound in the digestive tract, which is okay. There's benefit. That's where most of the toxicity is, right? That's going to be beneficial. But just the claims that these liquids and nanos are able to, go into the brain or go into organs or something is very unlikely. No matter what the particle size is, there's no proof from any zeolite is able to actually penetrate into organs or into the brain. But really, I would argue that you don't want a zeolite product to do that, because the more efficient way is to bind the level 1 toxicity and for the body naturally to dump the toxic elements out of the organs. That would be my opinion there. So for dose comparison, liquids generally around 2 to 5 milligrams, sometimes up to 25. A lot of times the liquids are actually sub 1 milligram, just the large particle size liquids. And even some of the popular brands that have sold lots of product over the years, they're like 300 micrograms and they're not nano. They're huge particle sizes. So it's just something to be aware of. Nano's a little smaller. 300 micrograms is generally the dose for most of the nano zeolites. That's less than 1 milligram. In comparison, ZeoCharge is 5,000 milligrams per serving. So much higher dose. You just cannot. So even if you have a quality product with a liquid or nano, the challenge is going to be getting the proper dose to offer an effective and efficient detox, because it's just so low. And the whole dosing theory is not going to apply generally with the liquid and nano, because you don't want to, if you get a reaction with a couple sprays of a nano, you don't want to take more, because it's probably going to make things worse, because there's a threshold. You don't want to just keep stirring stuff up more. You have to basically get a high enough dose. And that's where just a substantial difference between the ZeoCharge in terms of dose and some of the other products. And we have very small particles as well. That's the other thing. So a lot of the powders are going to be a little bit larger particle size. And the ZeoCharge, we do have the sub 1 micron. So that's very small, usually smaller than the liquids. But we're not doing anything under like 100 nanometers, because we don't really, and that would be 1/10 of a micron. So we don't really want anything that small, because there's a range of toxic elements that are going to be present in the body. And if you only have nano-sized particles, you're not going to be able to effectively trap a lot of the toxic elements. And so you might be able to trap some things and break open biofilms and disrupt things, but it's just there's a lot of redistribution that occurs because it's a very the cage is too small. So if you can't fit a mycotoxin or a heavy metal or something in the, some toxic element in the nano cage, then it could potentially adsorb or attach itself to the surface, but that's not going to be as strong of a bind as if it's actually carried into the cage. So that's something to consider, kind of interesting, but we have a range. So we have less than 1 micron, which is really small. And then we also have some that are a little bit over 6 micron, because we want that range to bind to a number of toxic elements. After that, we kind of put it in that range, because if you have too high of a particle size, you're basically getting a reduction in surface area, and you would need to take even more of the product to get the same effect. And then it starts getting grainy, and there's an issue. So ZeoCharge is the finest zeolite product on the market. There's no graininess. Most of the zeolite products, powders that you take, it kind of tastes like you were at the beach and you got a mouthful of sand. So pretty grainy. ZeoCharge is the only one that we found that has zero graininess. ZeoCharge, right? So that's our flagship, Zeolite Labs. We did the case studies program prior to launching just to see what it could do. And we saw that it was able to reduce the tissue levels of 15 toxic metals. And that's all the metals we tested for. So every single metal we tested for, it was able to effectively reduce. And that's all 3 levels of detox. So we know it's a full body detox. And it was able to do so selectively without depleting the essential nutrients. So, and in most people, it actually, while detoxing, it was actually able to improve vitamin and mineral status, which was honestly pretty shocking to us because we just didn't even know if that was possible. But it was such an efficient detox that the total stress load in the body was being reduced while the detox was occurring, which was honestly quite incredible. So that's what we're looking for, right? Effective, efficient. Effective meaning it's working, efficient meaning it's working with the body. And with ZeoCharge, you have a really quality product. We also have the third-party testing documents, and the case studies are available on the website as well. And there's a number of educational videos you can check it out. And then you're able to get a proper dose, because those are really the 2 most important things with Zeolite: quality product and taking it at the right dose. If you don't have a quality product, you don't want to take a high dose. All right, we developed what's called the Ultimate Zeolite Experience, and this is kind of it's a program where you start with a high dose and you work your way down, because the general approach of start low and slow just does not apply here, and especially for people that are incredibly sensitive, potentially with mast cell activation, on the kind of the line EMF sensitivity, that spectrum. And those are the people who always say, "Oh, I need to start with a tiny dose to see how I respond," but the low dose is just much more likely to cause the detox reactions than the high dose. So what I recommend is starting with a high dose and then working your way down. And that's the point of this program. So it's great for sensitive clients, where they start with 6 scoops per day. So that's 30 grams for the first month. They do that for a month. The next month, they do 5 scoops per day, then 4, then 3, then 2. So it's a 5-month program. You start with 6 scoops, which is 6 jars per month for month 1. Then you go 5, 4, 3, 2. And then at that point, you can recommend that they maintain on 1 scoop or whatever they want to do. Generally, it's going to take longer than 5 months to remove most of the toxic metals from your body. It just takes longer than anyone wants it to. And it depends on how long you've been accumulating. So if you've been accumulating toxic mercury from silver amalgam fillings in your mouth for 30 years, it's going to take a while to get them out, because the body is only going to detox at its own pace. Now, the healthier someone is, the faster they're going to detox. But still, the body's only going to release so much mercury at a time just to protect itself. So that's something to be considered. But the idea is to start with the high enough dose, 1, to avoid the reactions and for it to be an official gentle detox, and 2, to be able to get to the deeply stored metals right away. So your body opens up the pathways and really starts getting a full body detox. And then as you get the ball rolling, you can start lowering the dose. And as you lower the dose, you should still be able to get the full body detox, even at the lower dose. Prior to launching ZeoCharge, we conducted a case studies program to actually see what the product could do before we started going and making claims, because there's so many claims on Zeolite, and we just wanted to actually see what was going to happen. So one of the things we wanted to determine was, truly, is it safe? Because there was some concern about the aluminum toxicity aspect, and the clinical research indicated that it wasn't an issue, but we wanted to know for sure. So we definitely, without any shadow of a doubt, were able to prove that ZeoCharge does not cause any aluminum toxicity. There's no reason to be concerned there. And surprisingly, it actually had a strong aluminum reducing effect. So people were getting actually massive reductions from the tissue level in aluminum. So, and another thing we did even prior to the case studies program was we had one case study where an individual took, and it was me, 150 grams per day. So that's an entire jar a day for 10 consecutive days. And we did the testing before and after and measured, and there was a 0 accumulation of the aluminum. There was just a minor reduction, but nothing much happened. So that's 10 days on an entire jar a day. So no concern. But the case studies, a lot of them were a lot longer than 10 days. So a lot of them were 30 days or longer, some of them 60, 90, and there was no cause to be concerned for aluminum. So that was number 1. The next thing was we were able to see that ZeoCharge was actually able to remove all 15 of the toxic metals we tested it for, and it was able to do so in most cases without negatively impacting the vitamin and mineral status, which was kind of fascinating. And one of the most surprising things is that the nutrient status in most of the case study participants actually improved while they were removing the deeply stored metals, including mercury, which was quite impressive, and we were very pleasantly surprised to see that. So initially we did start on with a split dose. So we had one scoop twice per, or one tablespoon at the time, we didn't have scoops, one tablespoon twice per day. And it was, in some individuals, it was still effective for detox, but it wasn't as efficient as we wanted to see it. So when we switched over to 2 scoops once per day, just taking it all at once instead of splitting it, it actually worked a lot better. So it was just as effective and actually a little bit more effective of a detox, but much more efficient. So it wasn't disturbing the minerals or vitamins, because really the key is to get enough zeolite on each dose to prevent the redistribution and prevent the detox stress from occurring. So that's one thing we found. But basically, we discovered, okay, ZeoCharge was able to remove all 15 toxic metals from all 3 levels of detox, from the tissue level, full body. It was able to do so without negatively impacting vitamin and mineral status. And there was no reason to be concerned about aluminum toxicity. So those were really the big things. So, and then there was a few people that had previously taken liquid and nanozeolites as well, with it was just a disastrous situation. They weren't able to continue from the terrible detox reactions. They were able to take ZeoCharge with great success. And just from the study, we saw great movement in the heavy metals and improvement in minerals, and they didn't get the symptoms and they actually felt better. So there's a whole case studies page on the website on zeolitelabs.com. So there's a number of videos just going over various case studies. So you're welcome to check those out to learn more about some of those. One of them was the binding dose versus detox dose, or maybe a few of them. So that was just showing an example of someone who was taking a lower dose for a number of months, and it was helping, but it wasn't getting to the deeply stored mercury. And when the dose was raised, the body then started removing the deeply stored mercury. So that is important. That's why the higher dose sometimes is just necessary, especially to get some of the stubborn metals. And mercury definitely seems to be, for a lot of people, the most stubborn metal. And it's not uncommon for people to be detoxing every single metal except for mercury, because the body just won't budge on the mercury. But then the dose is raised with ZeoCharge, and then the body releases mercury. So quite interesting. All right, a few questions that your clients are probably going to ask you when you recommend ZeoCharge. One is, when to take it. And the nice thing about ZeoCharge is it can be taken anytime. So even with a meal, and that differentiates it from a lot of other binders and chelators, because they have to be taken on an empty stomach. But because ZeoCharge is a selective binder and it's not grabbing onto your essential nutrients, it can be taken with food. And in fact, before zeolite was even used for humans, it was being used in animals, and it still is. And it was always mixed with the animal feed. So it was actually always taken with the meal with the animals. And the animal research indicates that it actually improves nutrient status in the animals, even when taken with food. So it can definitely be taken with food. I think the timing, the ideal timing is going to depend on the person, kind of if you're taking it with a meal, it's probably going to sop up some of the, metabolic waste products, or after a meal, like ammonia, those type of things, potentially bind to some of the toxicants that are in the food. And then if it's taken on an empty stomach, it's probably going to be, it's just the body's not dealing with the stress of digestion. So it's able to, work at a little deeper level. It just depends. We honestly haven't seen a huge difference when people take it after a meal or on an empty stomach in terms of full body detox effect. So initially we thought it was going to be much better on an empty stomach, but we haven't found a huge effect, but we kind of leave that up to the practitioner's preference. What I will say is taking it first thing in the morning is more likely to result in a detox reaction. So if someone is very concerned about getting a reaction, it would probably be good to have them take it after they've eaten something in the day. And I think probably the reason for that is it has a stronger antimicrobial effect when taken on an empty stomach, just as other anti-parasitics and other antimicrobials do as well. So digestion is another concern. People say, is this going to cause constipation? And what a lot of people are pleasantly surprised with is that it actually generally reduces constipation in people. It has to be the right dose. So a lot of times, if constipation is occurring while on ZeoCharge, it's because it's too low of a dose and it's an inefficient detox, and it's resulting in inflammation causing the constipation. But when those individuals raise the dose, then it often actually alleviates the constipation. Some people even get diarrhea. If diarrhea occurs, it's generally a sign of, some sort of parasite or something being rapidly released. So keep an eye on it, but the higher dose is less likely to cause constipation than the low dose. And a lot of people actually take ZeoCharge. They go on it to detox. A lot of people stay on it because they love what it does for their digestion. I recommend taking the entire dose all at once, opposed to splitting it up throughout the day, because it's really about getting enough on each dose. And we haven't seen any sort of increased detox effect when you split it up. But once again, that's going to be case specific. So just kind of depending on what it's binding to, and you can work with, do some experimentation. But we've just found that the one single large dose per day seems to work really well for people. How long you're to be on it? It's going to depend. I mean, how long has your client been accumulating the toxic minerals, and how fast will the body let go? And if you're doing routine testing, you can kind of get an idea of what's going on and how fast they're detoxing. But it takes longer than anyone would like. Unfortunately, I used to think it was going to just be like a 3 or 6 month process, but it's just going to take longer to get all the metals out. Now, even if they go on it for a month or two, they've removed some metals. They're better off than they were. But if they really want to get in there and remove the majority of the toxic metals and other toxic elements stored in their body, it's probably going to take a number of months and probably a couple of years. We don't really know, exactly how long it's going to take, and no one really does, but it's more than 3 months. I'll say that. The 5-month protocol, the Ultimate Zeolite Experience, is a really good starting point. And then from there, you can lower the dose. But the idea ultimately is for the body to regain control so it can naturally start processing these metals from all 3 levels on its own. I don't know. Some people might not be able to get there, but some people ideally could do that. But they need something to get the ball rolling. So that's why after the 5 months, potentially they can continue detoxing on their own. Otherwise, just the one scoop can continue helping encourage the detox process. So what to expect? What I say, when you're detoxing, you want to actually feel nothing, or you want to feel better, right? Because a lot of people, if they don't feel better right away, they say, well, this isn't helping. Well, what's your goal, right? If you're looking for symptoms improvement, that's one thing. If you're looking for a deep level detox, that's another. Because generally with a deep level detox, people experience symptoms. So if you can get to that deep level detox without experiencing any negative symptoms, that's fantastic. It actually just means the product is working very efficiently. If you feel better, that's probably because it's really more of the binding, and you're removing a lot of the toxic elements in level 1, and your immune system is calming down, and you're just feeling a lot better. So that it just kind of depends on what's going on. Some people feel better right away. Some people, they don't. And if it's more of a deep level detox and they don't feel better right away, it might take a few months to start feeling better. And those benefits are going to be a little bit different potentially. I mean, increased immunity, just less frequent illness, less joint pain, that kind of thing. Nervous system calming down. There's a number of things, but sometimes those things take a little bit longer, and they're a little bit more subtle than just feeling better instantly. So it just kind of depends on the person. It can be taken with other natural supplements. So if you have your clients on herbs or other natural products, they can be taken at the same time as a ZeoCharge. I usually just recommend taking anything synthetic a little bit away from it, just in case. Any sort of medications, I can't really speak to it, but you generally just want to take them as far away as possible. I will say that zeolites have been shown to bind to antibiotics. So if your client is on any sort of antibiotic protocol, then probably you have to keep that in mind, because it's going to bind to it and reduce the effectiveness of the antibiotics most likely. So keep that in mind. Those are just a few things. We've got a facts page with way more information on frequently asked questions on the website as well. So for your client base, who should you consider recommending ZeoCharge to? And personally, I would say probably everyone, but of course I'm going to be biased on that. But really the people, think detox for one, and then just think immune system calming probably as secondary, right? So anyone with a high toxic burden, anyone that has an obvious metal problem, either through testing or through, a questionnaire. So if someone has had amalgam fillings, they're going to have high levels of mercury. And if someone has had some sort of acute exposure or, lead poisoning or something, there's probably going to be a toxic burden issue. If someone has a complex health challenge, there's going to be a high toxic burden, just because their detox pathways are not going to be working optimally. There's going to be that accumulation over time. Clients that really seem to get benefits the quickest are those kind of I kind of like to call it the 4M spectrum: metals, mold, microbes, magnetic fields. So people with, Lyme, SIRS, just more hypersensitivity. Those individuals often respond very well. And I think it's just because their bodies just are struggling with their daily dose of toxins. And as the ZeoCharge comes in and helps lighten the load on the body and on the immune system, they just start feeling better. So those clients really benefit from it. But honestly, it just depends. I think everyone could benefit because just removing the toxic metals and other toxins from your body is either going to help now or it's going to help later. So even people that are relatively healthy, they're asymptomatic right now, the metals might not be causing too much of an issue right now because they're tucked away, but they might start causing problems later. So for example, as women start losing bone, or men with bone loss, and you have the metals like lead that are stored in bone, as bone starts being lost, then the lead is released into circulation and it can start poisoning you basically and causing issues. So a lot of times these metals are not causing a lot of issues for a number of years, but then as they start getting mobilized in the body for various reasons, they then become problematic. So it's just better to remove them as quickly as possible to avoid problems later. And if they're currently causing a lot of problems, of course, it's good to get them out as quickly as possible. So I like to consider ZeoCharge a foundation to various protocols, right? It's the practitioners who add it to their current protocols, it seems to work really well. It works really well with antimicrobial protocols. It works well with all sorts of stuff. I like to consider it a foundation. I just like to consider it a nice foundation to a protocol. A lot of people do take ZeoCharge as their entire protocol. They really lighten the load on their supplements and get off a lot of stuff, and they still get incredible results just from that alone. Like in our case studies, people were only taking ZeoCharge or a combination of ZeoCharge and fulvic charge and getting absolutely ridiculous results in a positive way. So some people choose to just go on that, but otherwise just adding it to a current protocol, I like to consider it a foundation. So that brings us to the end of the presentation. Thank you for sticking around, making it to the end here. I'd love to connect. Feel free to reach out to Jeff at zeolitelabs.com. And we do have wholesale and affiliate accounts available. So if you'd like to try ZeoCharge for yourself or utilize it with your clients, then please reach out and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. Thanks for watching. Keep up the great work and happy detoxing.